welcome to Monarchin Creative Design Studio. Today I'm going to interview very lovely Dexter. Hello, Dexter. Thanks for being my interviewee.
My pleasure. Lovely to meet you, Mona. Although
Yeah,
we have met on a number of occasions now, haven't we? But thank you
yeah,
for the invitation.
yeah, sure. We are doing the interview in both our Porsche living rooms.
Yes,
So I'm, I'm joking. There are Zoom backgrounds.
yes, they are in both cases. Yes,
It doesn't matter as long as they look good in the video.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Dexter, because I know your core services are sales and presentation skills. So could you tell us how the presentation skills help our sales skills?
Yes, I think that it is even more important now that we are in this kind of environment. I call it the televisual age, because most of our communication is going to be done through a screen. We used to call them monitors. Now it's virtually a television screen. And
Yeah,
so I think that it is important to present ourselves in the best possible way, because the key, as we know, that people who will buy from us if they know, like, and trust us. So the
yeah,
way that we present ourselves has a direct impact on how we are going to do business and
yeah.
whether we are going to do sales or not. So I'm very happy to chat some of the ideas I have about how we present better in Zoom so that we gain the business that we deserve.
Yeah, sure. Also, I know that you used to work 16 years for a sales platform, QVC, right?
Yes.
You want to talk about your experience in QVC and tell
Yeah.
us a couple of funny stories there.
Okay, I've got a few funny stories. Some of them are a bit rude, but so I'll try and moderate that a bit. But certainly for 16 years, I worked with QVC as a freelance, what they call guest presenter.
Yeah,
And shortly after I joined them, because they knew that I am a trainer and coach, and so they said to me, you know, would I coach some of the people at QVC? So they, and for people who don't know, QVC is a very big operation now. It's worldwide. And I think last year, the turnover was something like $9 billion.
wow.
So it's a major organization, effectively selling all manner of products through a
Yeah,
television screen. And so they sent me out to America to understand how guest presenters were trained. And so I brought back that idea and I said, actually, we need to do it slightly different. What
yeah,
happens in America won't necessarily work in England.
yeah,
And
sure.
so with a team, we constructed a way to present on screen, to tell stories. And actually, it's gone full cycle for the 16 years that I was there, both as presenting in front of the camera and selling millions of pounds worth of products for various companies. I was also behind the camera teaching other people how to do the same. And as I say, it's come full circle now because those skills is what I teach people how to present in this Zoom environment, as I say, in this televisual age. But you asked for a couple of stories. There was one particular guy by the name of Paul Lavers, who I think now lives in Spain.
Yeah,
I think he has a television sales channel there as well. And Paul was what they call a real wind-up merchant. If he could get us to laugh, or what they call corpse, so that you can't speak, he would do that. He'd play these terrible tricks on us. And so on one occasion, I got my own back on Paul, and I was demonstrating a security camera.
yeah,
And you know, these security cameras you can put on the outside of your house or inside the house, so you can see people come to the front door. We've got different things now. We've got like this ring, haven't we, where people can press the button, it lights up the camera, and then you can see them remotely. Well, in
yeah,
this occasion, you had to fix these cameras. And so we ran, as we were talking about it, and I was explaining how you fit it and all the rest of it, we went to a video, what they call a VT. And it was showing this fellow going down by the side of his house and fixing the camera to the side of his house. And whilst this videotape is running, Paul is showing, he's pointing it down his mouth, really just trying to disrupt me, and then also pointed it somewhat lower. And so it was at that point that the guy was up the ladder fixing it to the outside of the house. So I said, of course, you can always put it near your back passage. And at that point, Paul just collapsed in laughter. So much so that he had to step out of the camera view. So when we came back to live, I had to finish the cell because he just was not able to speak. And so when we came off set, and I said to him, "Gotcha, Lavers," because he always used to be a wind-up merchant, but on that occasion I got him. So that's one of the stories. But QVC was great, and it certainly has taught me the value of being able to present effectively down this one-eyed monster, which lots of people are frightened of, this camera. And so a lot of what I do now is helping people be more relaxed, create a story, and be able to sell, in inverted commas, because it's not always about products, it's about services, and initially it's about us. So that's a lot of what I'm doing now.
Yeah, cool. Also, because you mentioned about your work in the US for a while for QVC. So in terms of the sales and presentation, is there any cultural differences?
Yes, I think there are great cultural differences. That's a really insightful question, Mona, because the way that the Americans perceive salespeople is very different from how we perceive salespeople. Americans believe that salespeople, it's a legitimate profession, and they are prepared to be told to a certain extent that they should buy. Here, it doesn't work. And it's a lesson I learned some time ago through, and I don't know if you've heard about this methodology, it's called the Sandler Sales Method. And certainly Marcus Kauke, who was my coach, it was about really understanding the other person's needs. In fact, deeper than that, what is not going right for them? What is the pain they're experiencing? So in America, they would just sell to you. Here, we need to understand the other person. We need to create trust with that person. We need to really understand what those needs are and see if we can fulfill those needs. And it's about asking more questions. And so if there is one hint or tip that I can give to be more effective in selling what you're selling, that really understand the other person and ask permission to ask those difficult questions, both professionally and personally, because how we feel, how we react, what's happening in our home lives, what our fears are, has a direct relation to how effective we are in our business activities. So we need to understand both sides of that coin.
Thanks very much. Also, could you give us some tips in terms of presenting ourselves in front of Zoom or other online platforms?
Yes, I think there's three major areas that I can address very quickly. The first is equipment. And we've already talked about our backdrops, and I very craftily put up my book there, Stand Up and Sell, which talks about a lot of what we've just spoken about. But my main thing is make sure you've got a good camera, because people need to see you. And in relation to that, make sure you've got good lighting. And I'll just show you, I've got a desktop lamp. Now, if I were to turn it off, immediately it puts half my face in darkness. And it's important to be seen. So that's the key thing there. Also have a good microphone. Don't rely purely on the microphone or on the camcorder on top of the computer, or part of your laptop. So make sure you can be heard. So I suppose those are the three key things. Make sure you can be seen, make sure you can be heard, and make sure that the image you want to convey is in relation to the backdrop. The second thing is about what the content is of our discussions. And I certainly would recommend, one of the key things here, we do a lot of networking. I know you do. So when you do networking, make sure, rather than just joining a Zoom conversation, command the Zoom conversation. And that means taking the opportunity to present to the audience. And I say audience because, you know, as with me at QVC, part of what we need to do is to be entertaining, actually. As you asked me to tell a funny story, so that may be appropriate, or certainly a life experience. So think very much about the content. Don't leave it to chance. Think about what you need to say, think about what message you need to convey. And certainly when I coach people, I spend a lot of time understanding what the key message is, not from their perspective, but from their clients' and customers' perspective. So one of my mantras is, don't tell me what you do, tell me what you have done for others. So it's about content. And the last bit is about delivery. And what I mean by that is how are you going to deliver the message? One of the key things, and you're very good at this, I've seen, it's about eye line. Lots of people look down and see what everybody else is looking like. This is counterintuitive. What we should be doing is looking through the camera and making eye contact with people. So it's that I talk about the 3 E's plus 1. And the 3 E's are, how do you engage with people? That's the first E. And that means really, how do you start the conversation? How do you start your presentation? You have to be engaging, and there are a number of ways that you can do that. The second E is enlightenment. Will enlighten people, if you like. What are the things you're going to tell them that is really going to be helpful for them? And you can only do that if you really know what your audience needs. And often I suggest that you ask the person who's inviting you to present, as we have done today, what is it that you want us to talk about? What is it going to be helpful to the audience? So enlighten them. Tell them something they already know. Tell them something they didn't know. And the last element is FOMO. Do you know what FOMO is?
No, could you explain to us?
FOMO is fear of missing out.
Wow.
And it's the greatest motivator. If other people are doing something that you're not doing, then you need to know so that you can do it as well and hopefully beat your competition. The third E is, and I've already addressed it, it's enlightenment. It's entertainment. We need to be entertaining. We need to be able to tell a story that is relevant, so that it allows people to step into that experience. And the plus 1, the further E, the 4th E, is absolutely essential. Be excited about what you're doing. If you're not excited about what you're doing, find something else to do, because life is too short. We need to be excited, because when we're excited, other people are excited. So I hope that offers some ideas. The first, as I say, is make sure that the equipment is right. Next is plan the content, find out what people need and address that topic. And the last element is about delivery. How do we deliver the message so that we gain the business that we need and the business that we deserve? So I hope that's helpful.
Yes, thanks, very helpful.
Thank
so
you.
Could you recommend us what devices do you use? For instance, your microphone and camera.
Yes, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it's this black ball. It's called a blue, and it's called a blue snowball, which is quite strange because it's completely black. And you can be choosy. You can spend a fortune on a microphone. But I would suggest one that is I think they call it omnidirectional, so that it picks up the sound where you are, and it also has self-muting, so that if there is a noise in the background, it kind of cuts that out. So I think this is a Logitech microphone, and I would be choosy. Go onto Amazon. Unfortunately, a lot of companies are taking advantage of this lockdown, and so many people now being on Zoom. So be selective. I think this cost me about £50. So some people are selling for £80. So do your research. The camera is a high definition HD 1080p. It's also a Logitech. It does have an inbuilt microphone, but I find that it is better to have a separate microphone because the camera is some distance away from me. And also make sure, well, this particular one, and I can't take it, well, no, I can't take it off because otherwise you won't see anything. But it is, it's like a long one with like speakers either side, and it is self-focusing. So that's good, and it is also adapts to the light. So, and then I've talked about the lamp as well. So find a lamp that gives natural light, that illuminates your face, and that's really the key elements that I would recommend. Make sure you've got a good camera, you've got good sound, and that you're lit effectively. And then choose a background that is interesting, but not too disruptive. And so, as I say, I very craftily put up this, the book Stand Up and Sell, which does talk a lot about what we've just been speaking about.
So how do you think about my background today?
I think it's very fascinating. I think it may be a little bit cluttered, but I think because that's the key thing when we're talking, especially when we're giving a presentation. Certainly choose a room setting, and so I think that is absolutely right, because in the main we are speaking to people who are still working from home, and so as with QVC, and there's absolute correlation here, that we're being invited into people's homes. More and more people are working in their office, but there's social distancing and some people still feel isolated. So it is a medium whereby we need to create an emotional connection. Now, I know that sounds very, very strange in a business environment, but we have to recognize that we are speaking to people directly in their own settings. And so we have to be very aware of how we make that emotional connection, because, and this is a truism, that we buy emotionally, we decide logically. So everything is through an emotional filter. So don't, as I say, once again, don't tell people what you do. Tell people what you have done for others, because that's making an emotional connection, and it gives them a story that they can step into to understand what we do. So did that answer your question?
Yes, of course. And I also believe that case studies are our credibility.
Oh, absolutely. And I would say that there is a specific formula for case studies, which are in essence testimonials as well. So, and when you think about what you have done for a client, get it from their perspective, interview them and say, what is it, or what was it that I did for you that you were happy to work with me? Because when you do that, when you ask those questions, it forms the basis for your testimonial or your your story. I'm going to cough, excuse me. Pardon me. So by asking those questions, a number of things happen. First of all, you realize what your core skills are. Secondly, you may be able to get more business speaking to your clients, to ask them for your testimonials. And the third is you may be able to ask them for recommendations from people that would like your services as well, or they feel happy about introducing you. So that framework, and often people see their case studies or their testimonials saying, great company, this is what they did for me. and I was, on budget and on time. That's not a proper case study or testimonial.
Oh,
The key here is, what was the problem that that client, that company, that customer brought to you? What did you actually do to solve that problem? And the last bit, so the first bit and the last bit are essential. What was the problem they brought to you? And what was the quantifiable difference you made? It may be an increase in business. It may be a percentage increase. It may be that they were more effective in selling what they were selling. But that's the key. That's what a proper case study is. From the client's perspective, the customer's perspective, what was the problem? What was the solution? And what was the result? So that's my advice in terms of testimonials.
Okay, thanks very much. Because I got a case studies page on my website. If you don't mind, maybe I can send you a link. You can give me a bit of advice.
With pleasure, with pleasure.
Okay, thanks very much.
That's a selling medium. It's what I said before. When you allow people, through storytelling, when you allow people to step into the experience and see how you've resolved a difficulty, and never call them challenges, call them problems. Because the challenge to me is like, throwing down the gauntlet and we'll resolve the challenge. A problem is something that people bang their head against the wall because they can't resolve it themselves. So always talk in terms of a problem. So yeah, I'm very happy to have a look at that. And as I say, go back to your existing clients and customers and say, what was it that I did for you that you were really happy with? Because then you may get some more business from them.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Pleasure.
Also, one final question.
Yes.
So what do you see in another 6 months' time? So in another 6 months' time, are we going back to face-to-face presentations, or are we still going to do more Zoom or online presentations? What do you think?
I think that we have to prepare for a continuation of Zoom or whatever the other facilities are. I mean, there's Microsoft Teams, there's Skype, there's one that I've recently been invited to talk on called Remo, which is almost like duplicating the normal networking experience, where you go into a plan of the room, and there are tables and you can see the different people sitting at the tables. So you can go to one table, you can have a conversation, and then move to another table. So that's another way of doing it. And I think that people have realized that they don't need to go traveling. They don't need to go vast distances. And I would say that that is going to stay. I run with a colleague what we call our virtual boards. And we have a group of people, normally 6 to 8 people, who discuss the particular business problems they have. And we have somebody from Portugal. We speak to people from South Africa, and as close to home as Scotland. So I think what Zoom and the other facilities have allowed us to do is to disregard borders, to realize that we can do business anywhere in the world. And I think that's really important. So I think that will continue. It's always been the province of larger companies that they will communicate remotely and virtually. And I think that, that is becoming so cost effective now to be able to work with people in this environment. I coach people in this environment. There does need to be a slight difference in thinking when you are asking somebody to do something to help them. So I think my answer is that for the next 6 months, especially as we're going into a winter period, when we're told, and already it's starting to happen, that we are in semi-lockdown in certain areas, I think people are going to be very cautious about meeting. And in fact, we can't do at the present moment. We can only meet in groups of 6. And that tends to be outside, and even with family members. So I think, unfortunately, this semi-lockdown situation is going to be with us for some time. So we have to be more effective on our Zoom interactions. we will be able to meet people one-to-one, face-to-face. But I think the question is, do we really need to? As long as we are more effective, and I would say the effectiveness is not only about Zoom calling, and I would say this, but creating videos and doing what we're doing, having podcast conversations that we can post on our social networks. So I think it's here to stay. And I think the longer we are in these situations, the longer it will become the natural way of doing business. So I have a bit of a problem with that phrase, the new normal. First of all, because actually the way that we're now communicating is not new. It's been around for some time, and what we're seeing is a development of that. And ultimately, we will be in virtual networks so that we will actually be able to move around a room in virtual reality and augmented reality. So I think that's certainly going to be a growth area. And I think also that when we are in those environments, we need to be able to tell those stories. And I think that's going to be the way forward. Yep, we are missing some of the interaction, some of the body language and understanding that. But I think that this is going to be the new way of life. And is it going to be normal? No. It's not going to be normal. It's going to be very different. And the way that we will be able to survive is to change our attitude. You know, there is a phrase which says that change is the normal in nature. We resist change. So I'm suggesting just go along with it. Find out what works for you. Relax into it. Take advice. I would say that, obviously. And just go with the flow. That's what we need to do.
Okay, thanks for the very valuable tips and advice.
My pleasure.
And thanks for being my interviewee again.
Thank you, Mona. It's lovely to speak to you, and thank you for the opportunity of having this chat.
Okay.